Welcome to Water Wizards, where we get inspired by the movers and shakers of the world, those catalyzing change just like water. So happy to have you all here with us today. We have the absolutely amazing and divine David Stone with Embodied Soul Awakening here with us today. So as usual, let's come into the now moment. If you don't have your glass of water, you better hop up and go grab one now, because we are going to set the intention to breathe deep with us, breathe low into your belly. And we are setting the intention that all of the magical codes that come through during this activation, because it's always an activation, flow into our water, and they are amplified as we drink our water and feel the activation in every single cell of our body, every single strand of DNA. We're in this together. You are not alone. We are so honored to have you here with us today. Take a drink of your water. Feel it move through your body and support us as we have come to this planet on perhaps the most amazing, magical time ever. So I am Monica Painter. Welcome to the Water Wisdom Podcast. I'm here with David Stone today, who specializes in many things. I'm going to introduce him to you, and I'm going to ask him to share with us a little bit about what his offering to the world is. Then we will talk a little bit about his awakening journey, and then we're going to dive into a concept that came up as I was doing his meditation this morning. Something that will definitely resonate with everyone, especially the parents that may be in the room. We're going to have an amazing conversation about navigating two worlds, the colliding worlds that we are partaking in right now on this earth plane. So welcome, David Stone. How are you, darling?
I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super honored to be sharing presence with you. I think you're absolutely amazing. I did your meditation this morning and it was magnificent. So thank you for your gift to the world. And so I want to start by asking you a very general question so you can take it where you would like to take it with us. I would like for you to share with us, pretty please, a little bit about your unique offering to the world. What is it that David Stone brings to the collective?
Thank you. It's a real honor to be here. So, what I offer is the way back to yourself. So, landing home inside yourself and that feeling of coming back to yourself, feeling home in yourself, and guiding you how to do that as we break out of this old construct and we come back to this new reality, this new but very old frequency reality, whereby we're being asked to kind of shed everything that just does not represent the best of us. And how do we coalesce ourselves back in this new reality and stabilize there, where the rule sets are very different to the old paradigm? And so we're seeing this clash of worlds, the breaking down of our reality, a lot of discomfort, a lot of old diseases, a lot of old mindsets coming up to the surface, people snatching at traditions, trying to reinforce those values, lock us into new technologies that are underpinning very harsh old ways that do not work anymore. And as we feel the newness, the kind of innocence, the childlike essence of us wanting to break free of that garbage, it's like, how do we stabilize that as responsible adults with practical realities, with this multi-dimensional brilliance inside, and come back home to stabilizing that? So that's the journey I feel I'm on, and many people are on, is kind of bridging these worlds and coming back home to yourself.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Okay, so, and how do you do that? How do you support us in doing that? Share a little bit about what your offerings are.
Yeah, so there's a mixture of ways into that. I run a course called The Power of Presence, which at the moment is over 10 days, and there are 7 days with 3 days off in the middle. And that really is a continuum, and it builds over time. So it builds over those 10 days, and it builds, I run it a number of times a year. So that helps people to start to come back to this frequency of presence, of coming back home to their physical body and shedding what is part of them that isn't them, that's become so accustomed to feeling like self that just starts to drop away when we perhaps wash it away with a higher acidic or alkaline frequency that starts to rub away, agitate away the aspects of self that are accumulated, but they aren't us. So I do it through the course, I do it through one-to-one coaching, and I also do it through water frequencies, which I make in a bottle with flower remedies and other parts of herbs, and I'll tune into your kind of DNA field and feel into the parts that are ready to come away so that just your essence can come in and then rebuild the matter of your human back without that garbage, without that kind of crud, the aging patterns, the disease patterns, the mental habits, the emotional loops that kind of restrict you, that are sometimes, some of my awakenings have helped me see those restrictions, but it's how we come back in and then shed those so that they don't decay in us as old ways, as our old humanness. And then we can kind of galvanize that freshness, that aliveness. And it's that maintaining that momentum that's so tricky, and that stability whilst embracing this kind of quantum way of being and inhabiting this world. So it's those are the three mechanisms I've got, the three ways in to working with people.
Oh, I love that. I love the water aspect. So let's talk more about that because that's super magical and I love magic. So where did this this intuitive nudge to do that? How did that come through? Do you remember? That's
Yes.
very unique.
Yeah, I've always lived in quite spiritual places, so I've always interfacing with a lot of spiritual people. And
And where are you right now?
I live just outside Glastonbury in the
That's
UK,
so
which is
cool.
the heart and the third eye chakra of the planet. So
Hmm.
it's a very powerful portal, but it's also a portal of death and the dead. So, and it's all about the waters here. We have well waters of the different springs which flow through the ley lines, and the ley lines come together. And I actually learned to do this water work of bringing frequencies into bottles that could assist this evolutionary leap. And I did that at Avebury, which again is on the Michael and Mary ley line. So it's these kind of vessels of life force, of masculine and feminine life force that flow through the planet and create that kind of blood flow, that life flow of dragon power, of our true human nature that's in the earth's frequencies. And water flows that through certain junctures. And so I was at Avebury with a friend, and she just showed me how to use intentionality to connect to those frequencies and then invite them into the bottles. And so I just learned how to then attune to people's fields, and I got introduced to a whole set of frequencies by going to Stonehenge, Avebury. There's a place called Woodhenge, and I would sit and I would meet with the guardian of each sacred place, and they would offer me access to connecting into the frequencies of, I guess, regeneration that each of those portals held. And so there's like different flavors of frequencies in different areas where it kind of attunes you to what's really happening on the planet. So really, they're like tuning forks. They're like water-based tuning forks that work with the Earth's field to attune you, the human, and your field to be at that frequency. So that anything that your field is holding that doesn't resonate with that starts to either repair or move away or upgrade to that kind of purer frequency that's in the earth or the cosmos, because there's there's the earth and nature and those frequencies, and then we've got the moon and the sun and the cosmos. So all those frequencies are available to tap into and to work with.
That's so cool. Sacred wisdom. So do you drink the water? Do you put it on your body?
I tend to make it into bottles and add flower remedies to it so that
Hmm.
I try and make it very specific to the person's needs. I used to just bottle it without any other things. And each frequency, I actually had a master essence of all these different sacred sites. So I had about 200 essences from all the sacred sites that I would tune into and then ask people to hold the bottle, and they'd come and see me and sit in meditation with those frequencies. And it was kind of like the kind of early days of experimenting with this way of working. And now it's just matured into, I just work with a singular bottle with someone, and I download those frequencies into that bottle with the flower remedies too, and any other kind of like rose petals or flower pots of flowers that are safe for to assist people on their evolutionary journey.
Oh, that is magnificent. So what comes to my awareness when you talk about that is my daughter, when she was born, she had a hole in her diaphragm. And so she was immediately put on a ventilator in the ICU, the neonatal ICU. And the chaplain baptized her the day that she was born. And the baptismal water, my grandma had brought from the church in one of her old medicine bottles. And so we brought the water in, we put it in a shell. It was a beautiful little ceremony just at bedside as she was on the ventilator. Bless her heart, strongest little girl ever. And just FYI, she's perfectly fine, almost 17 years old, in perfect health. But my point is, I still have that bottle of holy water. And the intention, the love, the blessings that went into this water, it's what I've experienced with this little bottle of leftover water that's 17 years old now, is the structure of it is totally changed. The magic of it is such love infused into the water, how water truly does work with us. The inside of that bottle smells like roses.
Yes.
And, I'm sure that there was some medicine residue in there that had to be overcome as well. It was my grandma's old medicine bottle. And still to this day, there's just a very little bit of water left in it. You open it up and it's perfectly white inside of the bottle and it smells like a rose. Literally smells like a rose. How magical is that?
Because you're literally, water is one of the best carriers of frequencies, and that goes right into the cells because we are literally made of that cellular structure, that light structure, and water is the best carrier of that.
Oh, pure magic. I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go back a little bit to your awakening journey. What I love about the conversations that I have with my guests is, we're in this time now where we're really learning to not put people on pedestals. And personally, when I listen to you, sometimes I'm like, huh? I really have to lean in to like get it. And I know it's not about getting it, like the codes are being transmitted. It's all energetic, right? But I really have to lean in it takes me some extra effort to follow what you're saying because it feels so expansive to me. So that's a compliment, obviously. But I also run into this, like, I really don't want to put people on pedestals. We don't want to do that, right? Because it separates us from one another. And so I'd love to talk about the human aspect of you and really bring in your humanity and remind people that, yes, we have people who have massive followings and who are doing great work and really taking us by the hand and helping us to expand. But like, this is a real guy that had his own unique awakening experience as well. And I think it's super intriguing to learn about the human aspect of David Stone. And so I read a little bit about your awakening journey on your website. And I would love, love, love to just hold the space for you if you feel called and open to share a little bit with us about your healing journey.
Yeah, well, I think it started with me striving to be as successful as possible. And I came from quite an ambitious Jewish middle class family. And it was all about becoming somebody and being successful. And I think in that drive and in that kind of makeup, the programming I underwent was very damaging to my core sense of self. So I was so driven, I was so successful, I was climbing the greasy pole, I was achieving amazing things at corporate level, but it wasn't really me. there was a kind of like a sense of an imposter. It was like, really? How is this really happening? Who is the one who's actually achieving here? So it was literally like the family energy driving me. It was my dad's desire to shape me into his image that was kind of generating my desire to be good boy for that, to achieve, to do well for the family name. And I think a lot of people either just completely switch off from that, but I was like desperate to kind of please and be good. And there's almost like a sense of like a trauma response in that. And so I didn't really know who I was, but I had a very sharp, focused ideal of being this persona. And so that was a very strong identity that carried me very far with my corporate work. And then it kind of came to a bit of a cataclysmic end when I took a year off. I'd been ill with an abscess like this big, and I'd cleared that. I'd been to stay with a Native American Indian in Canada. And I did a sweat lodge with him. And that was my first real experience of miracles of healing, of how I could heal this kind of abscess that was this big up my ass.
Wow.
So that was a real awakening. And I had a type of surgery that enabled it to just flow out, release, and I got my full health back. And because of the sweat lodge, I had like about a 10% chance of a full recovery after surgery. And I really do believe that the sweat lodge on the Native Americans' land and then staying over there a week and being in his teepee on his ancestral land and just releasing everything. And I released a lot of rage. There was a lot of rage work, and we worked with putting the rage into stones and then putting the stones into the water. So again, water was part of that, and fire, obviously the fire of heating those stones up. And then I took some of the stones away with me. For many years I used to sit with them. But that was my first like real experience of waking up to just how much I paid a price. And there was this like gremlin, this golem inside me that was so unhappy with this shiny image that I was putting out that was making me really sick. So these ancestral layers of being programmed to be a certain way and having my actual identity like hacked or bashed in, and then this other identity kind of programmed over. And so that was my first dance with illness, was through that, and I overcame it really well. I went traveling as soon as I could kind of create a break in my career, and I went over to Southeast Asia, and I ended up doing a 10-day Vipassana in a monastery in Chiang Mai, which is in the north of Thailand, where I've since discovered one of the Thai monks had a complete awakening just outside Chiang Mai, where I was based. So as soon as I sat down in that field, having been sort of a bit mashed up, I was super open, because that was what my upbringing did to me. It kind of broke me down so that I could be kind of programmed. So I was super open, which, has its positives and it has its, substantial negatives. So as soon as I sat down in this monastery, I felt the awakening of that monk. And I just became like presence in that kind of nirvana state. I was just the mechanism of awakening. I was presence experiencing reality. So there was none of the human garbage. But that wasn't my reality. That was the frequency that was in the monastery and where that monk had awakened. So I was like taken to my darkest crap during those 10 days, and I sat with it and I walked with it and I meditated with it and I moved through it. And they said, you're on this incredible journey, stay another month. But being your typical glamorous Westerner, thinking, 10 days, I feel great, I'm off, and because I felt like 30 foot tall, it was just incredible. But that's, I was probably, I wasn't cooked, I wasn't ready. And so I went off, to explore the Thai islands, to have some fun. I wasn't a kind of seeker that wanted to bury myself in a monastery. I wasn't that, keen to be that spiritual. I wanted to go out there and party and have fun, because that was my year off after working, in a slogging out for 10 years with my career. I was about 27, 28. And when I was in I went to Krabi, and one of these Thai islands, that's when I got a psychic attack. That was my first serious psychic attack, where it could sense I guess the light that was in my field, but how I wasn't really in my body, taking that light in and kind of anchoring into it. And so that what then unfolded was this entity tried to kind of literally tear me out my body,
Mm-hmm.
self in. And so I just fought it with all my might to stay in my body. And it was terrifying. It was like a battle all night. And that was a huge experience of the dangers of having awakening experiences and not understanding the implications of grounding yourself in, sealing yourself, doing it in a way that's kind of under the guidance and protection of somebody who knows what they're doing with it.
Yeah.
So I learned the hard way. I had to learn the really hard way. But after about 6 months, I managed to get myself fully back in and get it out through just doing Reiki on myself. I saw healers in Australia because I flew out to Australia. I worked with healers there. They couldn't help. I flew to Hawaii after Australia. Healers there couldn't help. But eventually they said, look, this is for you to heal. This is almost like the shaman's wound. And you have to kind of get yourself back in and get this thing out. And I did. I managed to do it. And it was a very difficult 9 months while that was going on, because it would attack me every night in my dreams.
Wow.
So it was really
Ooh.
full on. So I know a lot about these things, and having been very open, that's been a part of my journey to really go to the extremes of that predicament, and then to come back, clear all that out. And they call it the shaman's tear. So they say that sometimes we have these ruptures, and they're what initiates us to the other side and what's on the other side. And as we become initiated, we either go crazy or we learn to become the responsible gatekeepers of that tear.
Mm.
We become knowledge keepers of those gates. So yeah, it's been a journey to repair all that, to come back in, because that's where my sense of self wasn't nurtured and protected as a child. So because there were all these other kind of programs, I wasn't there sovereign within myself.
Right.
So when I sit with clients now, because I've managed to bring so much of my kind of authentic new self into all these places and clear out all that garbage, it's like I'm sat in my own light, contained. And that's what I support others to kind of start to see, all these programs, ancestors, entities that are wrapped around people in them, that disease patterns, emotional patterns, success patterns, all these things that create the identity, that become a fixed sense of self. Almost the purity of having cleared that out and just sitting with someone and getting them to kind of confront that and see that and become present to that starts to kind of agitate it, bring it up, and start to pull it out. And I think coming back to the UK and beginning a training as a Gestalt psychotherapist after that experience was so crucial, because Gestalt as a kind of way of being is a little bit like you become the coal of self-transformation, and you heat the coal up so it's red hot and burns from the inside out. Whereas Fritz Perls, who invented this, sort of was of the viewpoint that traditional psychotherapy or psychoanalysis was just like shining a light on the surface of a black piece of coal, and it's white.
Mm-hmm.
The light shines off the coal and looks white. And that's where you see a lot of false light spirituality. It shines off the surface, it looks bloody bright, it's very, very fantastic, but it doesn't actually fundamentally change the person on the inside. And so when I was reading all these books, when I was traveling on Gestalt psychotherapy, which I found in a bookshop in Australia, because I actually lived with a cult when I was out there for a few months as well, the Brahma Kumaris, who believe in ending the human race.
Oh.
When I finished 2 months with that cult, I met this wonderful guy who had a bookshop, who was very grounded. And I just read books on the Alexander technique and Gestalt psychotherapy as I kind of, would kind of, we'd amuse ourselves laughing at this sort of, just the toxicity of this cult that I
Oh,
never really
okay.
got.
So, hold that thought. Let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So, you tell us a little bit about this cult. How did you end up in this space with them?
Well, I wasn't very well, obviously, because of what was going on. So I just needed somewhere to rest.
Okay.
And that's your classic seeker's kind of trap where you're quite vulnerable, you're weak,
Yeah.
you're not well, you're looking for guidance. Somebody's going to teach you how to meditate. Someone's got the light, they've got
Yep.
power, resources, they've got the know-how, and and they've got like global presence. You think, wow, this is a global meditation community, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to help me to awaken, and yay, and they're really generous, and their retreat was free. And so it ticks all the boxes for a vulnerable seeker. And I
Yeah.
just meditate somewhere like I did in Thailand, get back to myself. And because I was a bright light, and I was still relatively at that point, I was mostly okay, but it would just come to me at night and affect me at night. That's when those things would happen,
Mm-hmm.
Freddy Krueger style,
Yeah.
scary stuff. And but the more I meditated, the more I could fill it with light and kind of try and counter it. And so I stayed on their 5-day retreat, and I think I just burst out crying at the end because someone gave me 7 gifts when you had to go and find a gift for your partner in nature, and someone gave me like 7, and I just like cried my eyes out at
Oh.
receiving so much abundance of somebody. And it just had the whole room of 100 people in tears at our innate inability to receive that love from another. And they just came up to me at the end, the organizer, you have to stay here, you're one of us, you're a golden soul, and we'd like you to become one of us because we're looking for golden souls, they're special.
Wow.
There was all that love bombing, that narcissistic kind of,
Yep.
trying to get you. And they said, please stay. You don't, you need to be initiated to stay in this compound, but we're going to not tell HQ, and you can stay, chill out, get yourself well. We'll look after you, free food, free accommodation, and be part of it. Just learn the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll go through your initiations, and we'll send you on courses, and we'll just fast track you.
What comes up for me as you talk about this is there are a lot of people who are experiencing these types of infiltrations that are very vulnerable. And what comes to mind is there is this special on Netflix called Twin Flame Revolution. And it is about a couple who is really calling people in and taking advantage of their vulnerabilities. And this is not an uncommon practice. Like, this is happening. We're all like rapidly awakening, and we don't know how, many of us don't know how to navigate it. I'm no guru. I'm just kind of bumping up against everybody else trying to figure my way out too. But that takes me to a question, some guidance for everyone. What I saw in this documentary, because I did watch it, I was super curious, is this level of like shame and guilt around the fact that they were so vulnerable and that they were tricked. Like, how could I be tricked in this way? So tell us about how releasing that and like forgiving yourself
Well,
and moving on from it.
yeah, that's an abuse. See, I was running an abuse frequency, a victim frequency, or an annihilation frequency. So I'd go to places, it would take advantage of me, of my soul, and then I could see, because I had those elevating experiences, I was in this crazy mixed bag
Yeah.
of having this wonderful ability to see, and yet running these familial frequencies of being victimized,
Mm-hmm.
of being annihilated, of actually probably being the virgin sacrifice, the blood sacrifice. So I was running some crazy frequencies, but I could see them, but I couldn't help but be them. So it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of agonizing, and it created so much rage. So I used that rage well. If it's one thing my dad taught me how to do, was to kind of activate the rage. So I walked out of the retreat and said, I can't fucking do this anymore. This is just rubbish. This is abusive, and you're all annihilating everybody's inner child. and I'm not going to stand for it, and I'm leaving. So they were like, whoa, you know. And the guy who I was staying with, in the end, they put me in one of the community members' houses. He said, full power. I only stay around because I enjoy the meditating, but you know, you're welcome to stay with me, use my car, live here for free. And he was really cool. Um, so that's how I got out of that. And I hung around with this old man in his bookshop, reading up books on Gestalt. And when you read, you know, certain people who are illumined, like the monk where I had my awakening in Thailand, those imbue you with a kind of setting of purity. So sometimes when you get settings of purity, you get the most extreme darkness, because especially if you've got a role to perform with humanity, you've got to experience these extremes that would
Yeah.
perhaps crucify your average person. And so it absolutely crucified me, obliterated me. But I was such a feisty character. I was able to come back from the death. And not just that time. You know, there's probably like a dozen times where similar things happen, because I was running this frequency.
Yeah.
Incredibly heightened awakening experience into the pure realms, and then the most devastating descent into the darkest places of spirit. And but what it did was it gave me a radar for that false light,
Yeah.
for entities, for things that interfere with consciousness on every single strata, so that I knew what interference was. I
Yeah.
knew what infringement on someone's sovereignty was, and I can spot it, and I can keep it out of my field. And when I'm working with clients, I can point it out to them and create that wave of sovereign purification where they start to push it out of their field and build that momentum. So I left Australia, went to Hawaii, and then came home, and then started retraining as a Gestalt psychotherapist, having left the corporate world. And that Gestalt training was just incredible. It stays with me to this day, because it's all about coming into presence, noticing what you're noticing. So, what's happening in your body with your emotions, but not being kind of controlled by that, but coming into this awakened presence of observing that, feeling the aliveness of that, but in that kind of very much that Vipassana inquiry, and working with the field of consciousness, working with all the parts of you that you couldn't come into presence with. They're all decoded in the field, like family constellations. You get like 10 people constellating your family constellation, and each person is playing out an archetype that's probably alive in your life or hidden from you. And Gestalt's very similar. You get to look at your field, and that's you. Your field is your life. And whatever you present with is a microcosm of your bigger issue.
Mm-hmm.
So when we had a chat just before this interview, we were able to talk about an issue on the outside that was reflective of an issue on the inside, which was reflective of an issue in the collective, and your
Mm-hmm.
particular flavor of experience of that. And
Right.
so as I started training Gestalt, I'd read all the books, and I just knew it was heating me up like a piece of coal, and it was cooking all the ancestral garbage to show itself and to come off. So that was my first experience of working with a purifying frequency that was source, that was like the frequency of source, the purification of source. And I've since refined that and learned to work. I guess that was my first experience of a mastermind that was
Mm-hmm.
purifying, because you can't escape the directness of the present moment, of bringing all your presence into it in your body here and now, and feeling the time space location of the density that you're inhabiting. When you bring consciousness, your physical inhabited body together, and presence, that's when you're kind of like literally landing heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Heaven, you're penetrating the density, the darkness, where all this garbage of humanity, all the entities, all the ancestral stuff, all the programming is hanging out in the density, in the darkness, and you're illuminating it with your presence, with your noticing, with the frequencies of purification, which are often the same as nature, as the elementals, as water, as fire, wind, the animal kingdom, the insect kingdom, these frequencies, they are aligned to purity. They are not corrupted like ours is as humans.
Mm-hmm.
But we've moved away from that pure essence where we can't kind of feel what it's like to be home and to feel that joy, where there isn't any interference, where, yes, we can be in flow states of experiencing other emotions, but we can find that equilibrium through those flow states rather than being pulled out of ourselves. Literally, when a lot of people meditate or seek awakening experiences, they take their essence and they go to that realm where the
Yep.
awakening experience is.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, they weaken that magnetic field between their essence and their body. So your essence doesn't quite know how to house itself in your body because
Mm-hmm.
that galvanizing experience isn't bringing you closer together, it's stretching you further apart. And so I know someone who's just been on a personal growth course with one of the big cellular healers over in America for a week, and they were all over the place. They weren't galvanizing that awakening into their body, so they were looking to anchor everywhere but themselves. And so that's like a form of that leaves you open to attachment issues,
Yes.
to gurus,
Yep.
and everyone to just be their own authority, their own anchor point. And Gestalt was beautiful for that because it's almost like you're helping the client find those missing links to that coming back home to themselves so they don't need you. So they find that completion of self within the self.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. What stands out to me as you're talking about that is the importance of somatic and quantum, really bringing the two together. And I also had an experience. It was not as loud as yours was, but I did have an experience with a community online very early in my journey. And for me now, when I'm looking into participating in someone's work and growing with them, if there's not a somatic component with the quantum component, it's a complete red flag for me because what you just described, working with someone who does cellular awakening and just opening everything up massively, but then you're not grounded in your body. I did experience that, and it was very scary. And it was a being who essentially was cloaked in light. I don't know how she did it, but she was really good at it, and she's still doing it. And it was really early for me. I didn't get it. I didn't really know what to look for. I was just looking for a place to land. And it was outside of myself. And so this is a great, we're not really segueing into it. We've been on it the whole time, but, talking about the pitfalls of the awakening journey, and when I hear your story, I'm very grateful for the most part, my journey has been incremental. I wouldn't call it gentle, but it's been kind of steady and incremental. There were been a couple blow ups. I'm talking to you makes me super grateful for this steady incremental awakening journey, because there are a lot of people who think they need this big mystical experience. Oh, like I really want the mystical experience. Well, is your nervous system going to be able to handle and integrate the experience? And how is that going to separate you from the everyday kind of mundane cyclical experience from life? Let's integrate gently.
And I think a lot of people are craving that awakening rupture because they're so trapped in the mundane,
Yeah.
so trapped in the misery, the program, the unresolved emotions, that they want to have that sense of feeling special.
Well, and if you keep ignoring the nudge, I had the gentle nudge, and then I did get a kick in the shin. If you keep ignoring the nudge, you'll get it. It may not feel good. It might feel like shit, but you'll get it, and it'll be really loud.
Because there's a lot of people who pray for that external help to take over themselves.
Yes. This is what we're raised to do, right?
Yeah, this is the whole of society. They get elevated, but they get elevated because magic comes at a price. So they go into these high frequencies and then they can sort of dispense those to others. But then whatever's elevated them has control of them and the other with some degree. So when you see these corrupted communities, even if they start off sometimes with the greatest of of kind of respect and intention, they can, some, not all of them, some are just a bit ungrounding for people, but some of them, where you see some of the nastier stories, that's where the person, if you are a higher purity and frequency than the person who is using that elevation of that other force to do the work through them, it's gonna want a piece of you because you're a more powerful soul. The kind of the people who come along and get a little bit of an uplift because they start off very low are very blessed because they think this is great. Come and see this person, this community. This is great work, and that can sometimes be the vast majority. So they don't see the damage it does to those that either run very powerful abuse frequencies or annihilation, sacrifice frequencies, or have a degree of purity that has more interest for the darkness that's behind that person. And so there are all these traps, and a lot of people are so desperate to experience something higher that these very basic tools of noticing what's happening within you, bringing your presence into that, is actually far more powerful, which is what my Gestalt training, which brought me back, which gave me sanity, which helped me to see what was inside of me, that helped me to purge that out. So I wasn't kind of dancing on the ceiling, looking for the light, because I have that tendency to naturally elevate to the very high heavenly realms, but it was about putting in that infrastructure so I was protected in between and sealed in between, and all the kind of developmental ruptures from when I was younger, putting those back in. So the way I work with people is very much like just looking where developmentally those structures aren't sound, because I've done it kind of probably the wrong way round. But I can bring a lot of experience and knowledge through that. But I've also spent a lot of time doing the basics now, and I'll much rather just ground someone in their body and teach them that resourcing, because the slow plodding method is the best. Because they're safe. You're not going looking for those resources in other realms outside of yourself. And occasionally, like, someone might feel it's right and aligned to do plant medicine, and that can lift some of that density away and take it away, because they know how to stay in themselves, because they know how to journey with that plant medicine by staying with the light inside them, rather than the light getting pulled out and kind of taken away, and them kind of separating in time and space from their body. So when they start to understand those magnetic mechanics of awakening, it's much easier to work with powerful forces such as plant medicines or other spirit forces, or going to see a guru, where there's dangers to that. If you aren't aware of yourself, if you're running, say, a sacrifice or an abuse frequency, sometimes that can get enlarged and become more prominent in your life. Or it can just leave a lot of garbage around that doesn't get cleaned out, like on bin day or garbage day. So it's knowing how to clean the decks out so that you can then bring more of your light in, and then draw and solidify that light into your human form, and then turn it into matter and stabilize it as we're changing into this new reality. And therefore you intrinsically are attuned to the new mindset and the new ways of operating in this new reality, the new programs, because you've intrinsically allowed all that garbage to show up, to come out, to clear out, and then to solidify that kind of truer light of who you are in, and to really capture it and have that kind of, as one mentor of mine calls it, that time-space referencing. So you can really find yourself here and galvanize that, your own essence, into your presence, and be that force of nature that is sovereign, that's not looking for anything outside of yourself.
Okay, so tell us in practical terms then, what are some ways that we as individuals, moms, right? Speak for myself. This mom, I work throughout the day at home. I've got one kid graduated, one kid homeschool, one kid at school. We all are living very busy lives, kind of butting up against the matrix and then this magic that we are feeling into at home. what are some practical ways that we can enhance, support, maybe even begin this journey? Some simple ways to help us to expand, but still stay grounded in the body.
Yeah, I've just made some notes, so let me just bring those notes up. I think what I might do is just invite people to listen to some tips, but also whilst getting into that state of presence in their body, because it's that way of heating up the coal. So it's becoming that thing rather than intellectualizing it and having a notion. So the first thing is the discipline of the breath. So rather than like me telling you to do something right now, just notice what's happening in your breath as you breathe. Don't try and do breath. Just notice how it is to breathe right now. That's the first tip I can give you. So there's no pressure to perform or to do a deep breath, but take a nasal breath in and a nasal breath out. And let's do 2 more of those. So what we're exerting here is discipline, but not discipline like do as I say or do it this way, but the discipline of noticing and becoming conscious and present to your breath and the quality of it, not grading it, not judging it, but noticing it in your body, that it's happening and you're happening with it. You're taking more ownership of it. You're coming into presence with it. And what you might notice and others on the call might notice is that it starts to feel more fluid. So we're creating a mastermind, just like there was a mastermind in that cult. We're creating a mastermind of sovereignty, a mastermind of presence, a mastermind of coming into your own discipline. So that's the first kind of big tip. There's a multi-layered tip there around discipline and embodiment.
Beautiful.
As we continue into some embodiment tips, just start to notice like this beloved being breathed in by the lover and the beloved, the mechanism of the breath, which might be the beloved, receiving the lover, the air coming in. So it starts to be a relationship. Everything in the quantum field is relationship. And unless you're observing the 2 aspects, the perceiver and the phenomena that's being experienced, and noticing that you are the observer, the container of that dynamic within the physicality of this time space location where you're doing it in your body. So starting to feel your body in the chair. So we're creating a frequency of presence, sovereignty, and meeting the beloved as the observer, as the experiencer, and as the phenomena. You can flick into the phenomenon, which is the air, smelling the temperature of it, the yield of it as it comes in. Is your lungs tight? You're gripping your teeth. What's the taste in your mouth? How relaxed and taut is your spine? What's happening in your groin? Is your groin, are you present in your groin? Are you in your root of your spine? What's, as you mentioned diaphragm earlier with your daughter, what's happening in your diaphragm right now? Is it safe? Do you feel safe? Are there other forces coming to presence that are interfering with a sense of safety? Intruding thoughts of busyness, intruding kind of familial thoughts, or is there enough peace just to let go of what's bothering you and to use the indwelling presence of your awareness to push out interfering frequencies, interfering energies, by simply occupying more of your bone structure, more of your physiology. So we're bringing the quantum into the physical as a felt experience, like heating up the coal. So there's no woo-woo to this. This is science, science of presence. And yet we've been going for 2 or 3 minutes as a, incorporating discipline, breath, awareness, spine, body, groin alignment, the mechanics of noticing. We've done about 5 modules in just 3 minutes.
Feels good. Feels good. I feel loved by myself. I feel loved by self in this moment in my body. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I used to call my work. It's hard to kind of name something that is this, the awakening of the beloved. It's coming back home. This feeling of being home.
Yeah.
And aligned and at ease in oneself, where flow happens, goodness comes in, because goodness is waiting to come in. You look at an animal, it's surrounded by resource.
Yeah.
And goodness, yeah, there's challenge. It has to interface with its environment, but it's ultimately always nourished. And absolutely vibrant through that relationship of gentle challenge or challenge. Then you can co-opt all of your karma, like, well, what about all my crap? Well, that then can become the kind of grist for the mill, the fuel, the karma for your dharma, I like to call it. So that can like burn off as you use instability to burn away and bring you more into this relationship, this disciplined relationship of presencing and awakening the beloved.
That is so beautiful. That feels really good. I want to ask you one more question, and then I want to show you something before we close out. What I've noticed is that as I really, really, with intention, consistency, drop back into my body and be super aware of every space in my body that's craving love, and being with the breath in simple ways, like you're saying, throughout the day. It's amazing. When I started this, I'm not even going to call it a breath work practice. It just is being present with the breath. When I first started breathing with intention, that's what I'll call it. I would take a deep breath and I'd have to set my phone. I'd set a timer on my phone throughout the day. Like every hour, I would remind myself via my phone to stop and relax and take a nice deep breath down into my belly, and then let that wave up into my upper chest. And then I would drop my shoulders. And I would always find that there was a place for the shoulders to go. Like the shoulders, it was like, oh, shoot, the shoulders are up here. And now I've softened so much that the shoulders aren't up anymore. And I'm saying this for many reasons. And one of them is because the external world is truly a reflection of our inward state. And as I soften with intention, simplicity, the world around me softens. And evidence of my coming back home to self in these simple ways, through the breath, through movement of the body. There's not a day that goes by now that I don't, in the morning, I will put music on and I will move my body, not in any particular way. I would just allow that light, that flow of source to move through my field, like that qigong, like move the energy. And my relationship shift, my experience with abundance shifts, my experience with my immediate surroundings and nature shifts. And this gets to be the simplicity of this expansion journey, is coming back home to self, doing the simple practices, And one of the statements that I find most triggering to people, which is a reflection of me, interesting, on my social medias, is it doesn't happen often, but sometimes people get really, really mad when I talk about the fact that your external state is a reflection of your inside. And so I don't really know where I was going with that question. I just kind of went into the ether. But can you just share your feeling, your thoughts around that? Like, because some people say to me, and these are the people that just, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you about this. I'm not here to convince you. I'm going to just give you a pillow and love you through it. Um, th- this one woman in particular was like, well, that's so easy for you to say, but A, B, and C. And I'm like, oh no, it's actually not easy for me to say or do or be. Like I'm on the journey with you, but like, can you give us a little bit of insight into like, what does that mean? And why am I not full of shit in saying that?
Well, it's a multi-nuanced question, and with the time we've got left, just split it into one or two ways.
That's what I want.
As you go higher and higher and you stabilize that presence, you're going to be met in two ways. Number one, your field is going to reflect to you the parts of you that aren't in harmony, but it's also going to be, because your field is in harmony, you're going to be tested. So that's the two nuances. Number one, it's going to reflect the garbage that can still trigger you, that's still of you. And as you learn to become more steadfast and work with that trigger and stay in your presence and not get entangled and come out of your field and lose that place, that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is you start to take on more of a role in the world. You start to become an anchor to harmonize what's out of integrity. And so it comes to you ultimately to go into a higher frequency. So you stop seeing it as an adversarial thing that you have to fight, you have to defeat, you have to break it, you have to elevate it. You start to see that there's actually a nobility in that, there's a graciousness in that, and that you have a response ability. Your ability to respond and elevate the field around you becomes more pronounced as your mission. So your anchoring starts to carry more importance. Once you start to anchor and stabilize, you can start to draw to you the abundant frequency that mirrors that abundance inside. So that's why it starts to become effortless effort to create abundance, because yes, you have to build an infrastructure of your business, but it starts to just happen to you, for you, with you. And then you get opportunities to elevate the field around you. And that field will either want to come with you to become more sovereign, to become more response able itself. And then parts of that field might just like throw a stone at you, and then you'll rebut that, and that will move out your field because it can't entangle with you, it can't drag you into itself or invade your field. So then there's all that testing, that stabilize. I wrote this as the fluidity, rigidity, collapse, and nurture phase, where you're using all of what's happening in your field to do that process, to see what needs to collapse and leave you because it's not true, and you are holding a false concept of self, and that might have drawn that challenger in to show you your own little bit of fakeness. Or it could be you are being true and you're just going to like elevate that thing on the outside that's come to you for elevation, and then you learn to more deeply nourish yourself from the inside out, and then you become more fluid in that process of growth, like the wild animal that has challenge but kind of makes itself more radiant. The more it faces the challenge, the more it grows. And that's the human condition, that natural aggression, the natural curiosity, the natural life force amplifies in you, but your ability to be disciplined with that aggression, that life force, that Shakti, that sexuality, it just becomes more harmonic, more stable. But it's not that it's not a dynamic process. You just have more ability to use the seven sins of sloth, greed, lust, whatever, to galvanize more power, to bring more love in, and to organize the field around you.
That's amazing. I love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you addressing that. That felt good. Okay, before we go, I want to share my screen really quickly. And so, what I did this morning when I was diving into your content and meditating is I always take a little beaker of, it's not called a beaker, a little glass petri dish, a little petri dish of water, and just set the intention to infuse the frequency of your work into the petri dish, and something different and magical always comes out. So, I took a picture of your petri dish, and I would like to show you before we go. And if you're listening to this, you can access this picture perhaps as the episode graphic or in the description.
Whoa.
Isn't that cool? Now, I will tell you that there's not always, see, there's a little epicenter kind of there to the left. There's not always an epicenter in these images. Now, the last interview I did, she works a lot with neuroscience, and hers looked like a complete neuron. I will send you this picture so that you can see it more closely and examine it more closely, but it's beautiful. Is there anything that you see in particular that resonates with you as your like unique coding of your work as experienced through Monica Painter?
That looks like a bit of a tree with
yes,
like a baby tree growing with its roots.
I see it.
Creating its own kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, it looks like a beautiful, like a scene. And I almost see to the right of it, like a little stream coming through. And I just think it's beautiful and divine, just like you. So I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much. That's lovely.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I would add that probably meditation was probably from about 4 years ago. So it'd be really do one from nowadays.
So a lot has shifted, but the intention was there and it was perfect. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time. And we can find you on Facebook under your name and under Embodied Soul Awakening. And then your website is embodiedsoulawakening.com.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So if you want to dive into David's offerings, go check out his website, check out his Facebook page. And are you on Instagram too?
Yes, and under Embodied Soul Awakening as well.
Thank you so much, David. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to learn more about how I support all of my mission work, Kangen Water, please check the description.